Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Iris and this is Madrona's Pulse Teachings, and we're going to chat about the week ahead, the astro forecast from July 22nd to July 29th as we come out of a pretty freaking powerful full moon. There's no other way to say it. It was the full moon conjunct Pluto, and this week I'm literally posting this just the day after the full moon. This week is going to carry us out of those energies, and bang, right away on the 22nd, just after midnight at 12:44 a.m. Pacific time, the sun moves into Leo. So we have this major shift of energy, and that's what happens when we have a full moon on the 29th degree. So we have the 29th degree of Capricorn moon, and then we have the 29th degree of Cancer sun. And now, of course, the sun moves in, and welcome to Leo season. Happy solar return to our Leo suns out there. If this is your first time on my channel, welcome. I talk about astrology. I'm an evolutionary astrologer. Also, I practice embodied and archetypal astrology. I'm also a cultural theorist and a feminist trauma theorist, and I talk about all things astrology, healing, spirituality, earth-based spirituality, all good juicy stuff. Please do subscribe if it's your first time, and let's keep going on with our Leo sun. Leo sun is opposite Pluto. How's that? So this is the threshold of moving from Cancer to Leo. So we had Mercury go through this first, we had Venus go through it, and now the sun is moving through it. So the sun comes into Leo and it's exactly opposite Pluto. And so this is very significant, especially because we are in a Pluto moment. And to be honest, this full moon, it opened a glimpse into the greater death cycle that is ongoing. We might have had a ritual around that. We might have processed a release of some sort. It might have been quite deep. We are witnessing endings and shiftings of tides globally. All you have to do is look on the news and we are seeing that. And yet this is part of a cycle that's lasting much longer than this moment, especially with Pluto. We're talking about what's moving into the fall here in the northern hemisphere, when Pluto is going to be back in Capricorn. And so all these energies are very potent, and right away our sun comes into Leo and it's opposite Pluto, signaling, and this is coming from a sun that, remember, at the 29th degree of Cancer, it was trining Neptune. So this lovely, lovely water energy that's actually wanting to offer some healing grace amidst all potentially turbulent shiftings and those kind of tectonic plate shiftings, which is what happens when Pluto is in play. And then the sun moves from there straight into an opposition with Pluto. And so it's kind of this idea that, in order for us to fully move and claim the Leo season of creative energy, Leo energy is it's literally feeling creative drive flowing through the body psyche, and it wants to merge out of the heart center and just create and play. And that's why Leo energy, it's not about other people. Leo energy in its true archetypal form, before it's been socialized and conditioned by a confused society modeled after patriarchy and capitalism and colonization, it just wants to create. It just wants to create, and it gets conditioned to start wanting and looking for validation. And that's when Leo can get caught in a dangerous cycle of creating for the sake of validation, and it can lose sense of itself in that creative flow of energy. But Leo season is about reclaiming that, reclaiming the connection to our creative drive and actualizing it out in the world, courageous playfulness, passion. And yet, for that to happen, there's a breakdown of something. Now, this is Pluto in Aquarius still. So potentially, how have we not been actually honoring our inner beautiful rebel, our rebellious genius, as we like to call that Aquarian energy, something that wants to break with the status quo. Therefore, this is a Leo that's not about seeking validation, especially from the status quo, because it's with Pluto, who wants to break that down altogether. And then the sun will journey forth. And the sun is not alone in its journeying forth. It is in a sextile to Mars. So Mars is just beginning its journey through Gemini, And at the beginning, Mars is trine Aquarius and it's conjunct Sedna. So Mars has some mighty transformative energy as well that's feeding into that sun in Leo. And then for this whole week, so 22nd to 29th, Mars and the sun are going to journey in a sextile together. And so there is this drive coming in, and this is an ideas drive. This is Mars in Gemini. This is communication, expression. We could have a lot of ideas coming forth, and that wants to feed our creativity. And we really just want to open to them, especially if in the beginning of this week, we sit with what's coming up, especially if it feels like there's a little bit of a block, and that's going to be that opposition between the sun and Pluto. We listen to that block, and then we, hand on heart, we ask ourselves how maybe we have been silencing ourselves in our own sense of self, in our own ways of showing up. And then we hold that and we let that break down, because Pluto's breaking down stuff. And that helps us access the heart energy of this creative drive that just wants to bring courageous playfulness and passion into what we're doing. It doesn't just have to be creativity in its own little box, so that's wonderful to have, and I fully support that practice and recommend it. But how do we want to just show up in our embodied self with a little bit of Leo flair that, again, is not for others, but for us embodying this creative joy? And Mars is going to help with communication, ideas around that. And there might be a lot, because Mars in Gemini is quite active. And yet there's more to the story this week, because Mercury is in its pre-shadow. In Leo, we have a lot of Leo energy. We've also got Venus, and Venus is on a kind of beautiful journey. So you want to keep watching for the Venus journey, because it's beautiful. But first, this is important because Mercury is in its pre-shadow. So Mercury is going to station retrograde August 4th, so next week, and I will put up a whole video on Mercury retrograde. But that means it's slowing down. The gears are starting to slow down because we're coming into a Mercury season that opens us to, okay, there's some revision, there's some reflection, there's some pausing, there's some sidestepping, there's, oh my gosh, a whole other direction that I didn't even know was possible. That's the, like, when we open to Mercury retrograde, aside from all the pop media around the horrors of Mercury retrograde, it can be such a time for gifts, because it forces us to get out of our own way and potentially see other directions sometimes, and just appreciate pausing, because in this world we have to claim our pause. So reframe Mercury retrograde as supporting us to claim our pause even when we don't want to. And yet this is important because Mercury retrograde is talking to all that Gemini energy, including Jupiter. Remember, Jupiter is in Gemini and it's very linked to Mercury. So when Mercury goes retrograde, that's important. But right now, this week, what's really important is that as Mars is kind of wanting to have an abundance of ideas, wanting to support that sun in the courageous energy, Mercury's slowing down. And it's slowing down in that courageous energy in terms of our ideas and our expressions. And so, you know, it might not be, firstly, the usual Leo season, because Mercury is preparing to station retrograde, and Mercury is ruling our Mars that's talking to the sun. And so just listening in, and do you need to rest? Do you need to claim a yin moment? That Mars generally in Gemini wants to be extremely active. And so again, we do want to open to those ideas, and we want to open to the creativity, and we want to open to the communities, open, and recognize that at some points we might need to slow down, and we're definitely not going to run ahead with every single idea that comes up this week. We're not going, you know, they might be wonderful, and then a few weeks down the line we're going to say, oh, that really can't actually happen because universe just told me to look this way, and I wasn't looking that way before, and now I'm looking that way, and it's a beautiful option, and I wouldn't have seen that before. So just keeping in mind that those perspectives are going to shift, and yet we can move into the joyful claiming of this Leo energy, and Venus wants to help us with that. So Venus is in Leo as well, and she has a busy week. That gal is busy. So Venus in Leo, remembering that last year we had Venus retrograde in Leo. So last year Venus was on a whole underworld journey, helping us to reclaim our self-love, helping us to reclaim a deep layer of self-love. And now, Venus is journeying through there. And this is very much, I would say, a week of working with Venus and that self-love in a kind of deep way. This isn't really superficial. This is getting into our embodied experience of our relationship with ourselves, of how we value ourselves, becoming courageous in the passion that we can show for ourselves, which then allows us to show it for others and receive from others as well. Showing it to ourselves is the core of so much. And first, Venus is going to be conjunct Vesta, the asteroid Vesta. She is our goddess of the sacred hearth. She tends to the sacred fires of our selfhood, the sacred fires that connect us directly to the divine, to goddess. This comes from her myth and her role in the ancient world of the Vestal virgins who were uniquely not married to a man or staying as the property of their father, but would live in community and tend to the sacred fires and be devoted to the goddess. And so with Vesta is extremely healing because she is really our sacred sexuality that connects right into our creativity, but it's between us and the goddess with her. And so that's where she can be someone, especially around sexuality and healing journeys. Vesta is a wonderful place to look. And this week is a wonderful place to feel into because she's conjunct Venus. So there's this pouring of divine feminine energy in Leo that is very supportive, especially as that sun is opposite Pluto. And so really leaning into the divine feminine, whatever that means for you, however that manifests, that is beyond gender. It's an energy that is manifesting and it is pouring out love. And with Vesta, it's healing and it is creative. Vesta and Leo is so creative. And so do lean into the art practices, do lean into the poetry, reading, writing, do lean into frolicking in the woods and just improvising poetry because that's energy that kind of feeds the soul right now. And then they're going to be together for a few days. So that is the 22nd through the 24th, and they're together through the 14 to 16 degrees of Leo. And then she leaves Vesta and our dear Venus goes on and she's in an inconjunct with Saturn for the next couple of days. And so Saturn's there in Pisces, and this is really significant, especially around the self-love piece because it goes deep. And that's why I'm saying this is not superficial. This is really about Saturn and Pisces is clearing out, along with Neptune, areas of our psyche so that we can create more structures to support our spirituality and literally taking us into new realities, okay? And there is a cleaning out process. There's a bit of a detox in the Pisces realms of our chart. And Venus now has to have a conversation with Saturn, and it's an inconjunct, which means there's something to be learned. And so that Saturn, what is there that we might need to let go of a little bit more so that we can access our self-love? What have we been attached to? And this is getting into some of the gook of Pisces, and that can be grief. That can be deep grief. That can be grief that can merge with guilt, that can merge with loss, that can merge with self-doubt. It's some of those really deep waters of Pisces. And Saturn kind of says, you can let some of that go. And Venus says, holy smokes, I can let some of that go. I can totally let some of that go. And that gives me more space to shine. That gives me more space to pour in the self-love so that I can pour that love into my own creative life, into my own relationships. And then I can also receive it from others who are pouring it into themselves. And we create this ripple effect of divine self-love. Pretty good. So, but we do have to listen. We do have to be honest with ourselves about maybe some deep emotions that we've been carrying along that maybe it's time to release. And then you can hold a ritual around that. And then Venus has got stuff to do. Venus moves on, and Venus comes in straight from that conversation with Saturn into a trine with Chiron and Aries, our healing, our wounded healer, right? But in this trine, it is about our healing. It is about a fire, primal, passionate healing of our creativity, of our self-love, such that it helps spark the fires of our primal self, that is a sacred self, that is connected to divine inspiration, that is our sacred instincts. Some of us really get taught to silence our instincts, and this is where Aries gets out of whack. When Aries isn't allowed to be aligned, heart, mind, and gut, it gets out of whack, and that's when it gets confused, and that's when it gets a bit rash, and that's when it gets accused of being selfish, because it's not acting as it's meant to. And oftentimes Aries gets conditioned not to trust its instincts, and that can also be part of life and difficult paths that we have at different times. But Chiron is helping us dearly with that, because Chiron we had a total solar eclipse that was helping us with this. Chiron is helping us to realign our heart and our mind and our gut, so we can access those instincts and be inspired to just courageously move forward with them. That's the sacred Aries energy. And it trines our Venus in Leo. Okay, after she's had this conversation and learned to let go of a little bit in order to create more structure for our spiritual path and our self-love. And there we see how our self-love is ultimately coming from divine love. And then that pours in and has this beautiful little symphony with Aries. And so there's a lot of healing that can come out of that. So it's a powerful week. It's a powerful week in that we start off with the sun opposite Pluto, and that Pluto is very charged. So the breakdown, the release, that continues, and it has a little bit of a stop and go rhythm potentially with that Mercury who's beginning to slow down, and might change the way that Mars moves in Gemini. That said, that Mars and that Sun are moving together, right? And as that's happening, we have this kind of beautiful journey and narrative of Venus and divine love, and just really leaning in to the practices that help us embody our courageous self-love, that we pour into everything that we want to pour our love into. How can we pour it into our work? How can we pour it into our relationships, whether that's with kids or partner or friends? How can we pour it into our relationship with ourselves? That's a really big one this week, okay? And following that kind of loving energy of the divine feminine. And I will see you soon talking about Mercury retrograde, our next new moon, talking about the astro for the week ahead, which I do on Mondays now. It's new and I like it, and hopefully it's supporting you. Okay, be well.